You spin me right round, baby. Just kidding. Alright, how to design an airplane and X-plane. The first thing you're going to do is name it and all that jazz. And change the tail number if you need to, and change your V-speeds. More on that later. You don't really need to affect this, but make sure your VNO or VNE is greater than 200-300 miles an hour. Knots, what have you. Next up, I always like to quickly adjust the fuselage to get a general length and rough shape. What this means is you go to these sections here and just trim them out manually, make just kind of like rough estimates where you think things will be. You can copy them and paste them like so, just to get the job done quicker. They added that in version 8 of PlaneMaker, I believe. And just quickly slam it together. Generally, the fuselage looks like a typical NACA airfoil section. If you're not familiar with this, you can look it up, or study the way a blimp is designed for aerodynamic efficiency. Again, you're not doing the fine bits here, you're just quickly shaping it, you're getting a rough idea how many occupants, well, you should already know how many occupants are going to be in your aircraft and what your design is. I didn't as I was making this. This is kind of a complete improv thing I did at lunch, but what have you. You're not going to get any breaks or pauses from me. This is done live in improv, just like I did it here. So now you got this turd. Gray turd, if you will. The next step is to add wings, and in PlaneMaker you can do different things up the wazoo with wings. Right here we're adding the change in the root tip chord, the dihedral sweep, and length and overall positioning of the wing. We can always change this later. Just always remember, it's good to get a basic start. Get a basic shape that flies. It's all that matters here. And make sure you know where your center of pressure is, and that's usually 25% of mean aerodynamic chord. I screwed that up. I don't think that's actually correct, but that's the number you want to look for, around 25%. And you want the center of gravity right around there as well to make it a positive, stable aircraft. If it was center of gravity was, man, this music is a little strange. I chose it on a whim as well. At any rate, you're going to want to fill everything else out. Right for here, we have the fuel situation. We want to have 2 tanks in the wings. Make sure they're 50-50. And we're adding a tail stabilizer, horizontal. And of course we're going to add our vertical stab. Your tail feathers are very critical to the key flight characteristics of your aircraft. What you're going to need to do here is, well, you're going to design your plane based off of performance. And right now, if you look, it's a very long aircraft, 27, 28 feet long. And it has a long moment arm. You see where the control surfaces are? Since it has such a long moment arm, you do not need large surfaces because it will actually cause instability issues, and you can overstress the airframe. More on that later. Again, you should know exactly what you're designing before you attempt to do this. I didn't. So you're seeing all the errors as we do it. But you will run into these errors, so bear with us. Here you're going to add your landing gear. Real simple. Notice there's a symmetrical problems, minus and plus. Minus and plus. Left-hand, right-hand rule, coordinate system. Here it's self-explanatory. Longitudinal, lon, L-O-N, means fore aft, and lateral is obviously right, left. And also add your gross weights, maximum weights, payload, and what have you. And in your engine, you're going to change this many, many times. The propeller here, this is a quick rubbish scenario. You never want to do this, and your design RPM is just ridiculous. At 4,000, shouldn't be that. It should be 2,700 RPM, typically, for especially propeller-driven aircraft. That's generally the ballpark, at least from my experience. And in here, there's a lot of things you can fiddle mess with, but you can get around that later. Again, we're making a simple design that flies. Oh, wow, that propeller is terrible, so we're going to thicken it up a bit. And here I forgot, it's been a while since I used PlaneMaker, so we're rolling around, realizing it's a little too short, make it a little longer, whatever. Now we're going to just rotate by using animate free surfaces, and it shows you what the bits and bobs will do. Also, if you notice, the control geometry isn't moving yet. We have to set that. We have to set the depth of the ailerons, rudders, and elevons to a certain chord percentage, and also the deflection angles. More on that later. Here we're just tooling around with the fuse, making it a little sexier and smoother for overall appearance. Yuck. Disregard that sexy bit. Looks like a retarded pencil. But you get the point. You can seriously play with this fuselage for hours. I once spent 4.5 hours trying to. I tried finagling to get the Hughes H1 to look right, but I couldn't because I didn't have a good working print, and my skill level sucks. So you combine the both, and this is what you get. And of course, this is sped up real time. This whole operation you're seeing here took exactly 1 hour, 51 minutes to be exact. This whole video, but more on this later. We're 50% through. Okay. I can give you more specific details on how to really make a good looking fuselage, but maybe at another time. For now, the core design here is just to get something to fly. You want a flying model, then look at that. Doesn't that look ugly? What happened to the tail? Looks like we screwed around with our tail section. Still out of place. Somehow we shortened things up, which is good. Actually, we didn't want it that long anyway. Okay, center of gravity, make sure you put this near that MAC, near your mean aerodynamic center, MAC. That's typically 25% of chord. The true aspect ratio. It's really hard to do that with X-Plane because X-Plane actually calculates engine weights, and if you get really funky with weapons and weapon objects that have their own weights, you can really throw the CG off. Also by adding fuel in the wings, which are a little further aft, but more on that later. The goal here is to have a little bit more weight towards the front of the pressure of center, the center of pressure. It's been a while. My aerodynamics are a little slipping. And you can quickly paint it, export, more on that later details. Now for the cockpit. You want whatever you want, you can have. I typically go for round, old school, standard 6 gauges. I admit that's an error. This is actually my first time building a cockpit live in this new version. This is a version 9 cockpit designer. I don't know, never used it before, so it's kind of me feeling my way around. I'm not really moving quick with it, as you can tell. Things are just misplaced and ugly, but we'll get to that later. Plane Maker has really improved from the past 2 versions. I love it now. I'm going to spend more time with it. And in here you can pretty much design any type of craft you so fathom. Just pick and plug and play and edit. This Plane Maker has there's more and more on that later. We'll get to another example. This is make a start button, simple stuff. Pardon me. Talking too much. I'm getting air mess ups. That's not part of the tutorial, is it? Have some tea. All right, there's our plane. We ready to test fly it? Sure are. Here's our control deflections. This is what I was mentioning earlier. Notice you don't see anything. You don't want to know why? Yeah, there we go. The percentage of the wing hasn't been chosen. And also those ailerons are huge. They're too big. Remember, I'm rushing. I'm doing this on lunch. I'm just flying through it. Really. So here, we quickly test fly it. You can quickly show the control. See how it's spinning out of control here? That means the tail wheel hasn't been set. It doesn't change. It doesn't steer. The tail wheel does not steer with the rudder, and you will set that in advance. My error. But at least we're up in the air. We're flying. We're realizing that she's carbureted. She'll stall and upside down, and she maneuvers decent. And you know what? This is probably, I am not lying here. This is honest to God's truth from Lawrence Aerospace Research Corporation. This is the best, this is the most stable aircraft I've ever built on one shot. You're witnessing this live. I did not measure anything. I just quickly slapped it together. At any rate, enough hooting and hollering. We're going to quickly test it, and we realize she's slow. That means the prop efficiency is terrible, 58, 55%. So we're going to quickly do some rolls, stability issues. She's a little snappy, means to control deflections are too big. We're going to change that later. We're going to land safely. Don't hit the passengers. Now here we're in the ground effect. Not now, but here you can see when we smack the air, it's hard to land. We're ballooning. And she has a very, very, very low stall speed, which means she needs to be heavier, typically, because she has a lot of wing area. And we can go on aerodynamics, but we don't need to because this is going to be another racing plane. That's right, baby. And yes, you did see that right. Oh, wow, it's over.